Welcome to Introduction to Speech. If you are on this training, you are likely to either be working with a child with speech sound difficulties or have your own child with speech sound difficulties. Speech and language therapists work on the following areas. We see children with social communication differences such as pragmatic difficulties or autism spectrum conditions. We see children with dysphagia, which is difficulty swallowing. We also see children with language difficulties. Language is made up of expressive language, which is the use of language, like sentence structure, grammar, vocabulary, and receptive language, which is the understanding of language within instructions, concepts, and questions. Today we are focusing on the area on the left, which is circled speech. Speech can be broken down into two parts. Articulation is the ability to say the single sound on its own. It's about whether the child can physically make the sound. So can they make a S sound? Can they make a P sound? Sometimes they may not be able to produce the sound due to a physical difference. It could be due to a cleft palate, or they could have lost all their front teeth so they can't physically go F. But sometimes it might be that they haven't learned how to produce the sound yet. Sometimes this can be expected at their age. For example, Th is a later developing sound, and we wouldn't expect this sound in a 3-year-old. Then there is phonology. Phonology is the ability to know where to say the sounds in words, and the understanding of how the words are made up. For example, a child might be able to say a Y sound in yeah, but then might call something lello. This is a phonological error because they can do the sound. It's not that they can't say the Y sound, but they haven't learned where it goes in the word yellow yet. Children who have difficulties with their speech sounds can be categorised as either a delay or a disorder. Delay is where children are following the typical pattern. However, they might be showing these patterns for longer than their peers. Using the last example, if a child is saying lello at 2 or 3, that can be expected. However, if the child is older or an adult is saying lello, then that would be a delayed process. Usually when children have delays, they make the progress on their own and they don't usually require speech therapy. Disorder is where the children are not following the typical pattern. For example, they might be able to do later developing sounds such as j and l, but not early sounds that we might hear in babble such as or b. Or there are vowel errors or less common patterns in their speech. These are the children that often will need direct input to progress. We describe sounds in 3 different ways. It's important to know this when supporting the children that we are working with. The first descriptor is place. Place is where the sounds are made in the mouth. For example, is it a front sound or a back sound? Manner is how the sound is made. For example, is it a long sound or a short sound? And voice is whether we are using our vocal cords or not. So when we're thinking about where the sounds are made in our mouths, it's helpful to say the sound and to feel where it's happening. So working from the red sounds, first we have p and b. So these are made with our lips coming together right at the front of our mouths. Going a little bit further back to the orange sounds, we have the f and v sounds. These are made with our top teeth gently resting on our bottom lip. Then we have the light green sounds. So this includes t and d and s. So these sounds are usually made with our tongue resting on the bumpy bit in our mouth just behind our teeth, and they're all made in the same place. Then if we go back to the purple sounds, we have k and g. These sounds are made at the back of the mouth with not much movement from the lips or the teeth or the front of the tongue. So when we are working with children, it's useful to use the descriptors of front or back sounds to help the children know where the sounds are made. Next, we have the manner, which means how the sound is produced. We have short sounds where the air is released really suddenly, like a balloon popping. These are sounds like p, b, t. You can't make the sound any longer, and it's just a sudden release of air. Long sounds are more like a hiss sound. There is friction. So sounds like s, z, sh. You can drag the sounds out and make them longer. For example, s, which you can't do for the short sounds. So p, you can't make that any longer. Then there are also nasal sounds that come through the nose. So if you hold your nose when you make the sound, it stops the sound. So The last way that we describe sounds is the voice or the volume. So voice describes what the vocal cords are doing when we talk, which is whether the vocal cords are apart or together when the air passes through, and then therefore whether our voice is on or off. When we whisper, the vocal cords aren't together, so they aren't vibrating, which is why our voice isn't there. Most sounds are in pairs with the same place and manner of articulation. For example, f and v. They are both made with the top teeth on the bottom lip, and they're both long sounds, but they differ by whether the voice is turned on in v or off in f. We call these sounds voiced or voiceless sounds, depending on whether the vocal cords are moving. We can tell this by feeling our necks when making the sound. So for f, we shouldn't feel anything, but for v, we will feel some vibration in our necks. It is important to use the terminology of loud and quiet sounds because some children get these muddled up. So you can prompt them with saying, oh, don't forget, that's your quiet sound, or don't forget to use your loud sound. Cued articulation is a sign system that is used to support production of the sounds and to show children visually with our hands what they need to do with their mouths. The child is not expected to learn or remember all of these signs, and you wouldn't be expected to remember all of the sounds either, but you just need to know the sounds that you are currently working on. It's not the same as Makaton, as it does not communicate a whole word, but just the sound and the placement. The sounds are grouped together in pairs. For example, p and b are both made in the same place right at the front of the mouth and are both short sounds. Then you have k and g, which are again both short sounds and are made at the back. The differences between these pairs are that one is quiet and one is loud, and this is shown by the quiet sounds using one finger and having one line underneath them, whereas the loud sounds use two fingers and have two lines. The place is shown by where your hand is, so if it's a sound like p, which is made right at the front, p is made where your lips are, whereas a k sound, which is made right at the back, k, k. If it's a long sound, the sound can carry on, s, whereas a short sound, p, is just over. Showing children the cued articulation when they are making an error helps to cue them in and supports them to produce the sounds. For example, if they say, look at the dun, you can say, yes, look at the sun with the prompt. I'll go through the sounds on the slide and the next, but if you want more information or more videos, you can find these on YouTube by Jane Passy. So, p, b, t, d, k, g, mm. An sound is made with the n and the g together, so v, s, z, sh, j, v. So ch is a t, and a sh together, so ch, ch. And then j is a d and a j together, so j, j. O, o, r, r. W, w, and y, y. Hearing difficulties can also impact speech. For younger children, especially in reception, it's really important to test hearing and to check that there are no signs of glue ear. Glue ear is fluid in their ear tubes. If they do have glue ear, it's not a big concern, but they may need grommets, and we might notice that hearing can be worse in the winter when they are blocked up. It's worth being aware that in winter months there might be more difficulty, so don't be disheartened by this, keep on going, and in spring it's likely to improve again. If they have some deafness, it's important to know what frequencies and what sounds they can or cannot hear, as this can impact speech sounds. If the child has significant hearing loss, then they will be seen by specialist SLT teams, so there will be more support for these children. These are some general ideas to support with speech sound difficulties. Unless you have been told by your therapist, try to avoid correcting a child's production of any words outside the sessions. If a child has said a word wrong, for example, tat instead of cat, then repeat it back to them how they should say it rather than asking them to repeat it, as this can lead to frustration. You can also use cued articulation. Try to model it back a couple of times so they hear how to say the word. Yes, you're right, it's a cat. Look, it's a stripy cat. Remember, it takes time to support children through these steps. Try to keep it as fun as possible with lots of games and rewards. It might take a while to work at the different levels, and that is expected. It is also more effective to do 5 minutes daily than 30 minutes once a week. In schools, you could try to do this in the register time or when other children are washing their hands for lunch, for example, and any 5-minute gap will make a huge difference. If you find it difficult to understand the child, try to get down onto their level and show them that you are listening. Try to focus on what they're saying. Try not to make a big deal if you have worked out what they have said, as this can result in the child becoming more conscious or more reluctant to try. Just respond to what they have said. Slow down your own rate of speech when talking to children with speech sound difficulties. They will be more likely to slow down, and it will be easier to understand them. Try and ask questions to gather more information. For example, is it about home or school? Was it about a lesson or on the playground? Encourage them to show you and to use gesture. If you still don't understand, that's okay. Try not to pretend that you do. It's okay to acknowledge and say something like, "Oh, my ears weren't switched on," or "I didn't quite get that one, but let's try again later." Thank you for watching Introduction to Speech Sounds. Please now watch the next part of the training that you have been signposted to. If you have any questions about this training that have not been answered, please contact the Link therapist for your school and they will be able to help.